My name is Catherine, and I'm interviewing Stuart Shook. Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Watauga County in the Shawnee Hall Township.
Okay. When were you born?
I was born September 21st, 1927.
What was it like growing up and living in Boone as a kid back then?
Well, see, I didn't grow up in Boone. I grew up out in the county.
Okay.
But I grew up in the mountains out in the county on a farm.
Okay.
I was a farm boy, mountain farm boy.
Let's see. Did you go to school in a schoolhouse, or did you go to school in a modern day type school?
I went to school, first of all, I walked 1.5 miles to a 2-room schoolhouse. In one room was 1st grade through the 3rd grade, and the other room was 4th grade through the 7th grade. It had folding doors between the two so that the whole building could be opened into one big room, but there was one room for 1st through the 3rd grade and the other room for 4th grade through the 7th grade.
What about high school? What would you do for when you were old enough to go to high school?
Well, I rode a school bus about 14 miles to school. And at that time they had high school was 8, 9, 10, and 11 grades.
Did you stay in school all the way through college, or when did you quit going to school if you had to?
Well, I didn't go to college now, but I graduated high school. I went all 4 years to high school, and World War II was going on when I finished high school. So rather than be drafted into the Army, whenever you had what they call a draft, you had to register for the draft. When you were 18 years old. So I didn't want to wait until then and be drafted into the Army. I wanted to go into the Navy, so I volunteered to go into the Navy when I was 17.
Okay. Growing up, did you have many neighbors close by, or were they kind of far away and spaced out?
No, that growing up, there were neighbors nearby. One really close by, within what you would call talking distance, where you could talk maybe a little bit loud voice, but you could see them and talk to them that way. And others were just a little further away.
What is your favorite memory growing up as a kid?
My favorite? Oh boy. I guess one of the things that I always look forward to is if my grandfather and my father or mother and grandmother happened to be somewhere away, that they would pass by a country store, that they would bring candy home. Being a kid, we always look forward to having candy, which was a very rare occasion.
Y'all had a sweet tooth, huh?
Oh yeah.
What's your favorite memory as an adult?
As an adult, favorite memory would be after I was in the Navy for such a long time, that coming home from having, being on the ship and being on a distant cruise for 6 months away from my home, coming back to home port and visiting my wife and my 2 kids.
Did you live next to any of your friends, like your best friends or close friends?
Oh yes, in Norfolk, Virginia, we were very close. Homes were very close together on the street where I lived.
What did you do for fun as a child?
Played ball, rode horses.
What games did you play?
Well, baseball and basketball. And basketball was an outdoor court. It wasn't indoor. We didn't have a gymnasium. It was an outdoor dirt court. And in the wintertime, when the ground was wet and so on, the only time you could play on it would be, the ground would freeze, And then if the sun was shining, the dirt, the moisture would thaw, so you couldn't play on it because it'd be mud. So the only time you could play on it would be in the morning when it was frozen, or in the summer or spring when it was dry, so to speak, out, other than wintertime.
You said you played baseball with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Did anything change about the sport? Like, did it progress in, I guess you could say, the technology of it when it came to, the bats and the gloves and the balls?
Everything stayed much the same. About the same as it is today in the games and what have you. But you have to remember that this was childhood, growing up and what. So we just observed common courtesies and the rules of the game.
Did you make up any of them on your own, the games you played with your friends?
Make up, what do you mean?
Just make up any games on your own, like, for fun.
No, we pitched horseshoes. Are you aware of what that game is? You take horseshoes and pitch them over and see if you can ring a stake on the other, about 40 or 50 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
We pitched horseshoes.
What was your favorite sport to play?
Probably baseball, I guess.
Baseball?
Because it was easier to do. Have a field to play on. We still played ball, with called baseball, I guess you could call it. And we didn't have money to buy baseballs, as you know what baseballs are today. We had to make our own baseballs.
What did you make them out of?
Well, at that time, we cut automobile tire inner tubes into little strips of rubber, and we would take that and take enough of it, roll it up into a ball the size of a baseball, and we would take needle and thread, big needle and thread, and sew it all together, sew it all the way around, and then take a little cover and wrap around it, and then sew that cover on there, and that's the way we made our baseballs, because we didn't have money to buy baseballs.
What did you use for a bat? Did you use like a broomstick?
Well, now you could in those days if you didn't have a bat, but we did have access to buying bats, ball bats, so to speak. We could buy those.
How many siblings did you have?
3 brothers.
Did you have any sisters at all?
No sisters.
Lucky. How many are still alive to this day, including you?
2.
Who are you closest to out of all your siblings?
Closest to the one, I was the youngest of 4 boys in the family. and naturally was closest to the next one older than me. We were closer in age, so I guess you'd say we were closer than the other two older ones.
What was your brother's name, the one that you were closest to?
His full name was Arthur Quentin Shook.
What was the age range of your siblings?
Well, let's see, me being the youngest, I'm 86 now. The one that was next to me, the next older, would have been 80, 88 and 90 and 92 in that day and age, this current day and age. That would be the age group.
How old were your parents when they passed away?
99 and 94, I think it was.
When did they pass away?
Probably about 15 years ago and maybe 8 years ago, mother and father.
What were their names?
My father's name was Tom. Just Tom, T-O-M. Not Thomas, but Tom, T-O-M. And my mother's name was Ada, A-D-A.
How did Uncle Quentin meet his wife, and what was her name?
She was Japanese, and they met in Japan. And her name was Masako.
Is she still alive to this day?
She is, yes. But he just passed away last week.
Why did he stay in Japan and didn't take his wife with him back to the U.S.?
Well, she wanted to stay over there, and he was in the Navy in World War II, and the reason that he was in Japan is they transferred people. His ship that he was on was in Japanese waters when the World War II ended, and they transferred people from various ships off over into Japan to make occupation forces. And he got out of the Navy over there in 1946 and got a job with the U.S. Army, and that was the reason that he stayed over there, working for the Army over there. And he met Masako, his wife, over there, and they got married and just lived up there.
Where did he live in Japan?
Where?
Mm-hmm.
In Yokohama.
Where would you say that's located at if you looked on a map?
Well, it'd be probably, I'm not sure about that, but probably southeast of Tokyo, Japan.
How did Uncle Carol meet his wife, and what was her name?
Her name was Angie, and he met her in Germany. He was stationed in Germany with the U.S. Air Force, and he met her in Germany.
Is he still alive to this day?
He is not, and neither is she.
When did Uncle Carol pass?
I'm not sure. It's probably been 6 or 8 years ago. I'm not sure of the year, how many years.
What about Aunt Angie?
Same thing, same.
So they died around the same time?
Oh, yeah, near here.
Out of Your siblings and all. Who all went into the military?
All of us were in the military. The oldest being Uncle Carroll in the Air Force, and the next brother down, his name was Thomas Frederick Shook. He was in the Navy, and then Quentin, he was in the Navy, and then me in the Navy.
Why did they choose to serve?
Well, we more or less had to, because World War II. We had to go, either be drafted into the Army or voluntarily go, so we were all volunteers.
If you had a choice to stay and not be drafted or have to volunteer, would you still want to go?
Yes, sure.
Were they involved in any historical events? For example, Pearl Harbor, like Uncle Quentin was in Japan and Uncle Carroll in Germany.
Well, the brother Tom was on a ship in Pearl Harbor when the Japanese Air Force attacked, Japanese Navy attacked Pearl Harbor. He was on the ship at Pearl Harbor at that time.
Was it scary if you didn't know what had happened to him yet, knowing that so many had died?
Yes, we did wonder if, because everything there was no television in those days. It was just radio. And the news over the radio, you had to wait for that and in the news to find out what happened and wait to hear from them by letter, from him by letter, to see if he was all right. And he was okay. His ship was damaged in somewhat, but it was not, the Japanese Air Force, Navy Air Force sank several of U.S. ships there, but his ship was just damaged, and that was it.
Were you involved in any historical events?
Yes, I was on a Navy ship and went to Beirut, Lebanon, in the Mediterranean when some of the uprisings in Lebanon took place. I was on the ship and went to Lebanon.
Where were you stationed from beginning to end, like when you first were in the Navy and then before you retired?
Okay, when I first went in the Navy, I went to what they call recruit training in Bainbridge, Maryland. And after Bainbridge, Maryland, 400 of us got on a troop train, what they call troop trains, 400 sailors on a troop train all across the United States to San Francisco. And from there we went to Pearl Harbor, all of us scattered to various ships. And I got my first ship in Pearl Harbor. And then I was stationed, I was stationed ashore, not on a ship, but I was stationed ashore in Pearl Harbor also. And on the island of Guam, and then on a ship in the Atlantic Fleet, and ashore in Glenview, Illinois, which is just outside of Chicago, and then in Norfolk, Virginia, and then a ship again out of Norfolk, Virginia. See, Norfolk was a home port for various Atlantic Fleet ships, so I was on a ship there in and out of the home port.
What regiment were you in of the Navy?
What now?
Like what regiment?
What did I do?
Yeah, what did you do?
Well, I was a personnel records clerk, maintaining all of the personnel records of all of the crew on the ship and shore where I was at.
Was it a very tedious job?
Very, very tedious. very hard job. If you can imagine maintaining personnel records for 300 or 400 other sailors, it's a hard job, very difficult.
What was it like being in the Navy?
Well, it was not all good, not all bad as far as that goes, but if you like adventure, it's adventuresome. If you like to travel, you know, if you like traveling all over the world, then that was good. I enjoyed that portion of it. I enjoyed traveling all over the world.
What was the everyday routine of a Navy man?
Well, it depended on when you consider the ships, it depended on the mission of the ship. See, these various ships, you got battleships and amphibious ships, and the missions, what they're designed to do and what they're called upon to do is different. I was on amphibious ships, and one cruiser, which is a one that has the turret guns, battle guns that way. They're for battle, and the amphibious ships are for doing amphibious landings, landing Marines, troops or Marines, whatever, on the various enemy islands or shores or whatever. So I was on amphibious ships for that.
What was the food like?
I considered the food to be very good. A lot of sailors didn't like Navy food, but Navy food was always good. You had to be there for breakfast at the regular scheduled time. After the scheduled time for breakfast, there was nothing else. You didn't eat between meals. You had to wait until 11 o'clock for the noon meal, from 11 o'clock till 12:30, and the evening meal started at 5 o'clock, 5:30, and you had to be there for that. Other than that, you didn't eat between meals because there was no other place to get food.
What time would you have to get up and get ready and eat breakfast in the Navy?
Well, I usually, reveille usually was at 5 o'clock in the morning. So if they sounded the reveille for time to get up, you had to get up. You couldn't stay in bed. There was no late sleeping. Let's put it that way. You couldn't stay in bed. You had to get up, period.
What would you usually eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the Navy?
Well, it depended. They have menus, and the menus vary. One morning for breakfast you might have scrambled eggs. The next morning you might have cream chip beef on toast. The next morning you might have boiled eggs. The next morning it might be ground beef on toast. The next morning it might be French toast or pancakes or waffles, something like that. And the noon meal varied, just like and the evening meal varied also. You'd have some kind of meat, beef stew or something like that for a noon meal or evening meal.
How old were you when you retired from the Navy?
38, something, I think 38.
So did you stay your full time or?
Yeah.
Why did you retire from the Navy? Just you wanted to get out and?
I wanted to get out and more or less establish home life, be with my wife and family, and son and daughter.
Did you get any awards from being in the Navy?
Service, being the American Theater and the Asiatic Pacific Medal and Good Conduct Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, and that's the American area.
Did you go through any traumatic experiences?
Well, if you consider a man falling overboard and getting lost at sea, that was dramatic.
How much of an emotional toll did it take when you lost a Navy man?
Well, you'd have to stop and think that it possibly could have been you yourself.
Did you lose any close friends? If so, how did you cope?
Well, we had to well, the chaplain would have a meditation service, that you could attend.
Did you lose any of your close friends?
No, not close friends, no.
How hard was it really being away from home and loved ones? Did you get used to it after a while?
Well, you have to adjust, and that's one of the things that you do your duties and do your work, and your mind is on your work, and you don't really get used to it, but you can adjust to it. That it hurts you to be away from your family, but you can get used to it more or less by continually working your job and paying attention to your job, so your mind doesn't wander off to your family all the time.
How did your family, as a child, make money or the income?
Well, growing up, like I say, there was no money at that time. We had chickens. We raised chickens and raised potatoes. You could sell chickens at a store to get money to buy things at the store, and you could sell potatoes, to the store in exchange for food products and things like that.
So you didn't really, per se, bring in money, but you brought in food. Mainly you somehow traded.
Yeah.
Did you have a job as a kid? Or did you have more than one job? Not including like chores or anything at home?
Well, no, I didn't have a job. Just the things that I had to do at home. Chores at home. As far as a job, working for somebody or some place, a business or something like that, no, I didn't have that growing up. Well, we had to feed the chickens, and we also raised hogs, swine, to kill hogs to have pork and ham. So we had to feed the hogs, and we had to feed the cattle, and we had to milk the cattle, the cows, and do all the farm work, hoeing corn, hoeing potatoes, digging potatoes.
Did you ever have to kill an animal, or did your dad and older brothers do that?
Most of that was done by my father.
Was it a smaller farm, or how big was it, would you say?
Something like 30 acres, I think, something like that.
Did your dad build the house that you lived in, or did somebody else build it?
He, along with helpers, people who were carpenters, helped him build the house. Yes.
Let's see. What do you know about your family background, for example, where your ancestors or relatives may have migrated from, like if they're Irish, Cherokee, English, or German?
Well, on my mother's side, it would be Scotch-Irish. And on my father's side, Dutch-German.
How did you meet Mamo?
Well, in high school, I drove a school bus for a couple of years going to high school, and I had to pick up students, about 15 or 20 students at what we call the end of the school bus route, and she was part of that group, and that's how we were acquainted.
Okay. When did you guys get married?
June 1954.
Was it a small family gathering, or?
Just immediate family. Her mother, my mother, and one of her sisters.
Do you know how many siblings Mamo had?
I think there's something, maybe 9 or 10 or something like that.
When was she born?
The year was 1932.
Do you know what day or month?
I think it was February 1932.
What kind of career did she have?
Well, that's just a wife and mother, and she did receive training as a nurse assistant and worked as a nurse assistant for several years.
So did she get that training from college, or just people had taught her stuff?
She from the hospital where she worked. She had the training from that.
What hospital did she work out, and where was it?
Watauga Hospital in Boone.
When did she retire?
I'm not sure of the year. Probably in 1980 something, somewhere in the 80s.
What was her schedule like? Did she have morning shifts, evening shifts?
She had the midnight shift from midnight until 8 in the morning. 11 o'clock at night until 8 in the morning. 8 hours, whatever that turns out to be. She worked the mid shift.
How long were you guys married?
Well, from 1954 until she passed away in the 80s or 90s. I'm not sure of the year that she passed away right now.
Okay. How would you describe yourself as a person?
Well, I like solitude, quietness, and I like to read, watch the news on TV, and I love show business. I like to see show business shows on TV. I'm not keen on watching drama on TV, the stories, in other words, on TV. I don't care anything about that. I rather see show business, show activities on TV.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Most all kinds except the modern day hard rock music. I don't like that. You might say it's the young people's music. Classical I like, and popular music. I just don't like the rock music. Let's put it that rock bands. I don't care anything about that. That's young people's music.
They're loud and crazy.
That's right, and I don't care for that.
How do you think other people would describe you?
Probably a quiet person, I guess.
So do you keep to yourself, or?
More or less, yes. I don't socialize, let's put it that way.
What do you want to be remembered by, or how do you want to be remembered by?
As a kind and courteous and considerate person.
What advice do you have for this generation and generations to come?
Work hard, study hard, conduct yourselves in a good conduct manner. Stay away from drugs and alcohol.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me interview you. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Well, I hope I've answered questions for you that you can use and so on.
You did great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.